Hey everyone, I'm Norn Queen Alexis, and welcome back to the channel. Today is concerning. Okay, I had to take a little bit to think about this and actually, really put it all in my head how I feel about GW's MDF terrain. Um, One, I think it's a really good idea, but I also think it's a very bad idea. And I want to go into this. Oh, and I ignore the bruises all over me. I fight. And here's your Kovu tax. There he is. He's taking a napo. Anyway, anyway, let's move on to this. So if you don't know, this is what I'm talking about. This is Games Workshop's MDF terrain for the starter set of Warhammer Kill Team for its second edition, or depending on how you want to say it, third edition. It's actually like the sixth edition, but we're not going to count that. It is the new second edition of Kill Team from the later editions of Warhammer 40k, even though Kill Team's been a thing since like fifth edition. But we're not going to get into that. What we are going to get into is this terrain. This terrain is very much reminiscent of older Warhammer 40k terrain sets from like the early 90s. Things like the second edition fortress and cardboard cutout terrain pieces that they used to have like this. And they also used to do things like this in the White Dwarf magazines. And while I think that that is absolutely fantastic and a great way for people to start getting terrain at their own home, this has me worried because Games Workshop is a multi-billion-dollar business who is only interested in making money. Terrain, for the most part, has been one of GW's biggest crutches. It does not make money for them at all. Okay, exaggeration, and that's a hyperbole. So, yeah, okay, doesn't make them money, but just not that much. That's why they never prioritize it. It's also why they never put a lot of stock out for terrain. They just don't really care. And GW is well aware that laser cut terrain and 3D printing already exists. No one can outproduce Games Workshop when it comes to their toys, their models. But that being said, most tournaments use laser cut terrain, and now GW could step in and make tournament terrain. This is where I think the next step of this is going to go. Games Workshop is going to release a battle box that contains, it's going to be like yay big, and it's going to contain all of the buildings for tournament setup. And this way, GW can now outproduce every single tournament out there when it comes to laser cut terrain and 3D printed terrain. And they're going to start attacking. Attacking is such a harsh word. They're going to start enforcing their terrain at events. This way that every event can be absolutely GW controlled, no third parties. Because GW is very much against a lot of third party terrain. Well, not terrain, it's against a lot of third party models, but they are aware that 3D printed armies can be a thing and are very cheap. But 3D printing is not something that's easily accessible for a lot of people. I live in this small apartment. I can't have a 3D printer. As much as I want one, I simply don't have the room because a 3D printer takes up a lot of room. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, actually, Alexis, your base plate is only like this big. And then you got to count in the resin, the curing, and all of the other machinery that goes in with 3D printing. And then you have all the resin costs. And if you live overseas, resin is extremely expensive, especially if you live here in Iceland. Holy shit, is it expensive. That's why I have a few buddies who 3D print and I just pay them. I'm just like, here's money, give me 3D printed models. And I'm, again, not against 3D printing. I, in fact, have a whole bag down here of 3D printed models, and these are Arvis lighters. Like, is the print good? Yeah. I'm getting them pretty cheap. I like it. These are just in parts right now. I am not against 3D printing. It is just not an option for everyone. But this terrain has me just slightly worried that GW might step into a market that is not really one that they controlled in the past, which is people making terrain for tournaments of Warhammer 40k. This might cut off a lot of those companies that are making third-party laser burnt terrain that sets that I really like. In fact, I have one of their paint racks over here, but you can't see it because, and I don't really want to lift it up because it would probably spill all over the place. Do I lift it up? I'm gonna lift it up. Spill everywhere. But companies that make things like this might soon face a problem because they're the same companies that make a lot of the terrain for Warhammer 40k tournaments. Carefully put this back. And they make a good profit off of it. So if GW were to step in and enforce that their MDF terrain is what is allowed at tournaments, because then it completely standardizes the tournament setup, those companies they'll still exist, but they'll take a huge loss because GW products is a lot more accessible than third-party products. That's one of the biggest problems that we see with third-party markets. Take games like D&D. Everyone knows what D&D is, and everyone hates the company that controls it, which is Bandai. Also Wizards of the Coast. Everyone hates those companies, but everyone also says, we'll just go third party, and you have third party books that are pretty decent. Most people don't want to play with those, and it sucks because there's a lot of content that is just going to be lost to the ether. Now, I do think that those companies could potentially shift their terrain up for Heresy, and a lot of those companies, they do make different types of terrain that GW simply can't make. A lot of the companies make things like the Dawn of War terrain, which GW could technically just shut down and be like, that's our IP, you can't really take it. But they don't. They don't see a problem with it because it's not something that that's competitive to them. It doesn't take away from buying models from Games Workshop. So with terrain like this, they're going to step into a market that I think that they should be a little bit worried about. Also, this shit's going to be expensive because it's Games Workshop and they don't know what the average price thing should be. Like, this is poster board, essentially. It's MDF terrain. It is almost garbage terrain. Like, if you break this stuff, you're not worried that it broke. You're just like, okay, I'll just go over there and buy another one for 7,000 ISK. When at one of the events here in Iceland, we have perfectly set tournament place terrain. Everything has to be exact, and it is fun. I love the people that I play with. I do find 10th edition a bit boring, but that's just me. But I do like the terrain, and I do like the play group that is here. I do, however, know that we buy a very specific terrain box that is from the company I just showed you. I'm not going to name them here, mostly because I didn't get a chance to read the product, and I kind of forgot what the name was. So that's my own stupidity, and it is behind a gigantic 3D printed Carnifex thingy that is just chilling here on my desk. I could have just looked at it. It is Tabletop Combat. Okay, that's the brand. But we buy all of our terrain from them, and when that stuff breaks, it's not terribly expensive to replace. It is cheaper than 40k terrain, but not by much. They've been marking up their prices considerably over the past few months. So GW could just step in and undercut their prices and just demolish them. Kind of like how, what's another, there's third-party miniature websites that have long since exceeded GW prices, which is very weird. Chromlech is one that has just completely exceeded Games Workshop's prices. Like, one of their tanks is 100 US. And it's like, yeah, but I could buy a battle wagon for 80. And everyone knows it's a battle wagon. Like, this thing is cool, but it's a tank. And the looted wagon is not really a thing. And a gun wagon is, well, it's cheaper to go with Games Workshop. So a lot of third parties are bringing up their prices a bit too much, in my opinion, especially being that they won't exist outside of their own, like, selling to Games Workshop customers. There are other companies that have started branching off and making their own games, and the games are very successful. I'm looking at you, Creature Caster. You guys are amazing. Your models are absolutely out of this world. And I do use those for Games Workshop games. I also use them for D&D. I use them for a whole bunch of different games, but mostly those two. But I really enjoy those models, and now they're making their own RPG setting with all of those creatures in it. So they have branched off and become their own game and everything, and I absolutely love it, and I am fully supporting it. But I'm just, I like this terrain. I hope it stays in Kill Team. I'm just worried. That's my biggest thing, is I'm not like, this is going to crush all third-party games, all third-party tournament terrain, and it is going to be the end of certain companies, and GW is going to sue them, and blah, blah, blah. Because GW doesn't sue anybody. They never fucking win a lawsuit. It's one of the funniest things in history. They always lose their lawsuits. It is hilarious. But, that being said, I want this to remain in Kill Team. Maybe, and I'm fully in favor of this, 1000% in favor of this, if they make Zone Mortalis using this. There it is. Then I am on board, because I want to play more Zone Mortalis. I have an entire Zone Mortalis table, thanks to my buddy Teo, but I want more Zone Mortalis. I want... It'd be cool if they did this with Zone Mortalis, or with, what's the shitty version for 40k called? Boarding Action? Yeah, if they did Boarding Action with it. Like, that's what I want. Like, Kill Team, you didn't even have to make that much terrain. Like, the terrain you could have made, it was good. The terrain for Kill Team, people bought because it was cool terrain. Like, let's keep that going. I like the cool terrain from Kill Team. It's really nice. And a lot of it appears in Space Marine too, so that makes me happy. Not the orc stuff. I want there to be orc stuff in Space Marine too, but now I'm rambling. There is a huge amount of potential for this product, but I'm just worried. That's the main thing I want to get across. And I'm hoping it's okay. Watch it just come out and just fucking suck. Like, you accidentally snap it by taking it out of its, like, the cardboard that they hold it in. And one of the other big things that I have, another big gripe about this will be a product not made in the UK. I know GW will proclaim that it's made in the UK because they assemble it in the UK, but this will be a product that they exclusively make in China. Just like all of their books and all of their cardboard comes from China. I'm not against this. I like Games Workshop because it supports its own country, and it's in its own country and Ireland. And I like that it is like, it still has the feel of a mom and pop business, even though it's a $4 billion business, which is kind of crazy to think about. But yeah, this shit's going to be made in China. And it's probably going to be garbage, and GW is probably going to slap like a $60 price tag on it and be like, Kill Team terrain, and all of you need to use it. And it's going to be like, you know, that's what I'm worried about. But I do know that it'll take like a company like 10 seconds to look at this, print it out on a square, and then laser cut it and be like, there you go, $10, boom. So I'm worried. That's it. That's where this whole video is. So yeah, that's everything. I just wanted to get my thoughts out there. I want to hear your thoughts, and please don't just say 3D printer go Bert, because every time you do, you sound like a fucking moron. Because 3D printing is its own fucking hobby, and it's super, super difficult to get into. Or I'm just dumb. I can't because I don't have the room. As always, I'm Northern Queen Alexis. I love you guys. Bye.